Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Whales of Wall Street. We've got a quick fire video of Casper Labs CSPR on the exchange to go through here, and then we'll have a bit more information around the chart movements and certainly its current price points, where we think it may be going. So without further ado, let's get straight into this one. Don't forget, of course, to smash that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Let's get into this. Going to keep it short and sweet. There haven't been many giant updates from Casper over the last few months, or certainly since the last video that we did. So I don't want to keep you guys too long, but I think this is worth mentioning for sure. This is about a few days ago, 3 or 4 days ago, this was announced that, or certainly through blockchain news, that Casper Labs has chosen INX to tokenize and list its equity for trading on the secondary market and utilizing the INX digital platform. So this is quite interesting. Couple of pointers here, not scheduled till September 2023. Maybe a bit of a tactic to get more and more INX users across the board, and certainly maybe the Casper users as well. I've got a bit of a thought process around that. I don't think too many people will move their Casper tokens across to a new exchange unless they really have to. But interesting to see those movements regardless. The other key point here, and I just mentioned a second ago, is this is one of, if not the only platform that is allowing, or is at least fully regulated, that is, for listing and trading both SEC or security tokens and cryptocurrencies in addition also. So very interesting indeed to see that point as we move forward into more of a regulation focused environment, certainly within digital currency, cryptocurrencies. But of course, there's a multitude of projects that keep getting pulled left, right and center as to whether they're secure or not, predominantly coming from the SEC, to be honest. Outside of that, outside the US, nothing seems to be much of an issue. So kind of opens up the opportunity as well to be accessible to over 60 countries. This might be very helpful as we move forward. But one thing I couldn't find, and if you know out there or have seen it yourselves, how many people are on or use the INX platform? Very interested. I couldn't find anything at all, because I think that's an imperative point really. We could see some price fluctuation anyway in September as this kind of news develops and that release of the token and equity does go on the platform. But in all honesty, like, it's really also down to how many holders or users of the INX platform there are. And how they utilize the INX token to perhaps encourage almost like a launch pad ethos, if you like, for Casper on their platform too. So a few things to think about, certainly something to keep an eye on. If we're investing right now, could we see some traction around that time to take note of and potentially take profits, arguably? Or it might be one of those that builds because of the news, i.e. buying the rumors and sell the news, as it were, that could come into play also. So just keep an eye on that. We will definitely, of course, it being an alternative trading system, so they call this the ATS systems. Very interesting indeed to see that. So regulated by the SEC. Not as much as the traditional stocks though. So yes, it's fully regulated. The SEC doesn't pay a giant amount of attention onto it, but it's certainly a bit more than what they would in stocks and things too. So very interested indeed to see the development of this as time goes by. But as I said, other than that, there's nothing really major coming out of Casper. Obviously, development continues. The team is progressing well, of course. But we're in a bear market, a winter market. News is quite thin. I do think, though, that they may just keep a lot of the eggs in the basket for that September period. Who knows? Might see a load of action and activity coming out of Casper Labs around that time. We will definitely keep you posted as we go along also. Or anything else in between. We'll do a YouTube short as a bare minimum to make sure you guys are engaged with Casper moving forward. So on that note, guys, we should look at the chart really straight into that. Obviously the current price points are very interesting, and certainly as we look at some data points as well in relation really to support and resistance levels that we might see in the short term and the long term that might define where we're going. But certainly also reinforcing the fact of an opportunity at these current stages for potential accumulation, which is what I'm doing now. So we can have a quick look here at the CSPR token. Of course, just tracking back, and there's a reason why I'm putting this in here. The recent goings on have obviously been lower than they were previously. $1.36 I think was the all-time high, and that literally links up with the launch of the token across the markets and across the exchanges. As you can imagine, over a 24 to 48 hour period, you tend to get a bit of fluctuation, volatility, and then usually a demise of a token's price point unless it's got some substantial collateral and investment behind it. So we see that's come down. The reason I'm bringing this to the attention slightly is because we don't really have giant amount of data to pinpoint support and resistance lines to the current areas that we're at right now. There's this small gap. Just bear in mind as well, between this May period, this is kind of where November, December time in 2021, where the whole market sort of went up on its the most recent bull cycle we had, really, the proper one anyway, where the NFT conversations came out, etc. Then 2022 wasn't great. It went very quiet. And that's how we see that big downward trend on there. So we had more recent highs of around 23 cents, 24 cents. This is definitely a definitive point in the future that we need to look at in terms of, well, we will definitely see volatility around those areas as we get to them. But there are small amounts, pockets of data that we can look at. But these are very much around that sort of 10-cent mark onwards. So currently looking at the price point of where we are today with Casper's token, we're currently trading around 4 cents. The most recent times did go up to around 7 cents. And as we just said, more recently towards, arguably kind of November, December time last year was these highs of around 5 cents. So data wise and historically wise, we're not far off really where we were last year. We did note in the previous videos, I have moved the fib retracement levels over to the right hand side, so we're a bit more in line with today. But typically speaking, these points that we drew as references are still very much applicable. You can see here I said that we would have some really interesting traction moments around this area as we define the support areas to move ourselves upwards. When we do move upwards from these areas, they don't last very long. As you can see back here in May, where most of the markets did rise up, to be fair, in that point in time, but the magnet of a bear and a winter market pulls it straight back down. And more to the point is the lack of data and information that we've got here from a trader's perspective, whether that's daily or long term, to define this as a secure, stabilized support level. So I do anticipate that we'll float around this area again. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see the lower regions, of which we still got our limit buy orders back down at these sort of 3 cent marks. That could definitely come into play again, and certainly down at these levels, at least at the lower spectrum of 3 cents. Just to reiterate, this is talking about this area here. We can kind of confirm that in two areas as well, on the longer term fib retracement levels and some of the macro ones as well. So when we delve into this a bit deeper, you can actually see an interesting pattern where we see those resistance lines as they come in. So the last 2 days, I've just drawn this in, 20% uprise from this point here, 21st, round about to the 24th. This was very in line with the news that we've spoken about earlier. Of course, we then see that retracement downwards to test these lower regions again. We've had that nice bump up, people taking advantage, and now we're seeing the transactions down as volume drop slightly, and as people then wait for those lower periods to make that kind of move of selling up in the higher regions and obviously buying up low. Very obviously common sense. But the other thing I wanted to mention is this particular area here that we drew in the previous video that we did on Casper a couple of months ago. This is still a very big area of interest to me, in my opinion. It takes one of those top higher regions that we've got at the 4 cent level, currently where we are right now, and at the lower 3 cent marks as well, based on data and input that we've got on the chart in front of us. So that's kind of where I'm seeing it going, really. I would anticipate that we would test this area. If you think about this as well, we've got this linear movement and average flow downwards. You can imagine a line going straight through this. This would ultimately take us potentially back down to that 3 cent area. That's kind of where I'm waiting for mostly. I am DCAing around this sort of like 3.7 to 3.5 mark, but to grab that half a cent is quite beneficial for me in my perspective, because I do want to accumulate as much CSPR as possible for the bull runs in the future. But more importantly as well, the technological advancements of Casper in general, its ecosystems, its integrations. We could see some traction around September time, as we mentioned in the video earlier about its it has been added essentially in the back end of INX. Its official launch, I believe, is September 2023, as we kind of identified in that article. We might see some traction. So let's see how that plays out. It's certainly something where I think as that news has come out, people have taken advantage of that. That was a couple of months ago. More recently, not as much big news, but there's still snippets, of course. So I do anticipate that we'll still have this bear momentum going on as we do the rest of the market. that will possibly pull that weekly back down to the red areas. It's not really terrible performance wise with the Casper token, but in general the year to date is really strong, but those short term levels are starting to really diminish, and that's why I think we'll see these lower areas. In terms of a DCA opportunity, is still quite high. Look at the bottom left here on the RSI. It's 14 days showing 59, 28 showing 50. That's too high for me personally, but I think as the week goes by, certainly in the next 2 weeks, we'll see those numbers drop to the points where it's a bit more comfortable in my mind personally to be accumulating Casper on those DCA opportunities, as well as the limit orders that may potentially come in back at the 3.5 and the 3 cent marks, as we mentioned just a minute ago. So that's kind of a bit of a reflection on Casper. It's going to take some big news again coming out, or a market trend overall, to pull ourselves back up to these testing grounds above that sort of 5 cent mark, in my opinion. But as I said, the long term, we have to look at that and just understand and identify that yes, it's a great technology, it's a great project, but we've got to be patient, guys. And certainly in the long run, this really has to identify proper support levels for us to take us forward. Traders or even bot traders look at this significantly. This isn't just something made up out of thin air. There's a definite reason for the visualizations of these charts, but real critical points of support and resistance as we go along here, telling a story of, are we okay to move up, or are we going to be dragged down? You can sort of predict a bit of the future, but certainly if you're a regular trader, a day trader, you can definitely take advantage of these positions as they come along for sure. But yeah, let's keep an eye out for these areas. It's been a really interesting week for Casper, at least on that area of the price point movements. But I do anticipate it to be dropping down. Let us know your thoughts on this project and technology. Try and do more regular updates on Casper. Certainly when the news comes out, the bear market is always a bit poor for really big news coming out. Development's continuous, but we'll definitely try and pull out as much as we can, as and when we can, even if it's just price point information. Really interested to know if you're happy with that, or if you just want to wait for the news operations that come out as well. So we'll leave that there. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next Casper update video. Take care. Bye bye.